What would you do if you found out that the person sitting next to you on a park bench should not exist? That their very birth broke every law of nature and morality. Their bloodline is a tangled web of forbidden ties so twisted that even modern science still can't explain how they survived. This story began on a cold February morning in 2021 in Massachusetts. Archivist Emily Harper, a researcher at the Salem Historical Archive, was sorting through dusty boxes of 19th-century records. Dust clung to her fingertips as she carefully unfolded the brittle pages. Most of the entries were ordinary: marriages, funerals, tax ledgers. But one slim booklet made her heart skip a beat. The entry, dated August 15, 1836, seemed harmless at first glance. The marriage of a 20-year-old named Andrew Whitlock to a woman named Mary Whitlock, nearly 2 decades older than him. An unusual match, perhaps, but not unheard of for the time. Yet, in the margin was a trembling note written by the same priest. "Lord, forgive me. This union is an abomination of nature, but gold weighed heavier than my conscience. I wed a son to his own mother." Emily read the lines again and again. The air in the archive seemed to thicken, as if the walls themselves held a dreadful secret. She realized that what she held in her hands was not a mere historical curiosity. It was the beginning of a story that could shatter everything we thought we knew about the limits of human nature. The old Salem records revealed something no one was ever meant to know. The union of Mary Whitlock and her own son, Andrew, did not remain hidden. Within a year, their first child was born, a boy named John. The doctor who delivered him noted unsettling details. The infant had extra fingers and a cleft lip. In 1839, a second child arrived, a girl named Sarah. She was deaf from birth and unable to hold her back straight. Her spine was grotesquely twisted, as if her body itself rejected the rules of nature. But the most disturbing case was their third child, Thomas, born in 1842. The doctor's note was brief: healthy, but there is nothing human in his eyes. Neighbors quickly began avoiding the Whitlock family. Animals bolted at the sight of little Thomas. Dogs howled through the night outside their farmhouse. Jacob Miller, an old farmhand, later testified in county court. "I saw that boy, no older than 3, tear a live chicken half with his bare hands, and laugh like he enjoyed every second of it." Servants abandoned the house one by one. Rumors spread of voices rising from the cellar after midnight. One maid swore she saw Mary and Andrew chanting over Thomas's cradle in a tongue she had never heard. The most chilling account came from a local priest. Father Samuel wrote in his diary, "I came to hear their confession before Easter. What I witnessed cannot be written without sin. They live like heathens. Mother and son make no effort to hide their union, even before the children. But the boy, Thomas, looked at me as if he could see my darkest thoughts. That night, every candle in the house went out on its own, and the crucifix in my hand cracked down the middle." By the mid-1840s, the Whitlock estate had become a place even the bravest avoided. Rumors multiplied. Strange rituals in the woods, livestock found torn apart without a blade, children's voices echoing from the cellar, while the family swore their offspring slept upstairs. When a county investigator finally entered the home, his notes read, "The family occupies only a few filthy rooms. The boy Thomas is chained in the cellar. The parents claim he attacks them like a beast. Yet in his eyes I found no fear, no pain, only fury." The case was officially closed. Records claimed the Whitlocks had perished of cholera. But the papers Emily Harper discovered made it clear: the truth had been buried. And this was only the beginning. The official record claimed the Whitlocks had perished in an outbreak. But the documents told a different story. In 1855, a boy named Thomas Whitlock appeared in the neighboring county, the same child once chained in his family's cellar. He was only 12, yet beside him stood his wife, a 40-year-old widow, his own aunt. Records documented the birth of a child with terrifying deformities: extra ribs, twisted limbs, teeth at birth. Against all expectations, the child survived. From then on, the Whitlock family tree twisted into a nest of serpents, each new marriage binding blood to blood. By the late 19th century, more children appeared. Many died young, but some lived, and with them came strange powers. One boy, recorded as Isaac Whitlock, could lift stones that grown men together could not budge. Another, Matthew, predicted storms and floods with eerie precision, down to the very day. In the journals of local physicians, frightened notes remain. These patients defy medicine. They seldom fall ill, and when injured, their wounds heal at unnatural speed. I saw a child's broken arm mend in 2 days. Locals began whispering that the Whitlocks were cursed. Their children were born twisted yet gifted with powers beyond explanation. Stories spread. Isaac halting a charging bull with a single stare. Matthew standing atop a barn during a thunderstorm, lightning splitting the sky around him. By 1900, official documents reduced their existence to cold phrases. Died of congenital defects. Infant not viable. Yet in old newspapers, brief articles appeared about a strange farm in Appalachia, where lights burned at night and livestock were found bloodless in the morning. One of the most chilling testimonies came from a schoolteacher who once taught Whitlock children. They sat silently, but I felt they knew more than I did. One boy sketched a star map I had never seen. 20 years later, astronomers confirmed it. The chart matched skies visible only from the far side of the world. How could a child have known that? The Whitlocks had not vanished. They survived, married within their own blood, and birthed new generations. And with each one, their human mask grew thinner. With the outbreak of World War II, the Whitlocks legend resurfaced. Soldiers returning from Appalachia spoke of a secluded farmhouse where the family kept to themselves, and where a child had stopped a bullet midair with nothing but a flick of his hand. By 1944, federal authorities took notice. Under top-secret clearance, FBI agents raided the Whitlock farm. The official report contained only a sterile line: subject secured. Family relocated for further study. In truth, the Whitlocks were transferred to a restricted research facility in Tennessee, not far from Oak Ridge, the site of the Manhattan Project. Behind concrete walls, their lives became a government experiment. Dr. Jonathan Clark, one of the program's directors, kept notes that later surfaced. Subject T. W. Thomas Whitlock exhibits superhuman strength. His son Isaac halts the breath of animals with a stare. Daughter Sarah communicates with her brothers without speech. Their reactions are simultaneous. We are not observing mutation, but a new form of intelligence. The children drew the most attention. In 1947, a boy was born with 2 heads, 4 arms, and a misshapen torso. Doctors declared he would not live a week. He lived. The heads spoke independently, argued constantly, yet thought as one. Clark wrote, "Both brains function in parallel. The left head solves complex equations while the right composes verse. Together, their intellect surpasses that of any adult subject studied." Witnesses spoke of stranger phenomena. When the children gathered, lights flickered violently, window panes cracked, and instruments recorded unexplained radiation spikes. The program continued until 1953. With shifting political priorities, it was quietly shut down. Officially, family returned to normal life. In reality, the Whitlocks were relocated to rural Kentucky under new identities. But peace never came. People began disappearing. Local sheriffs found bodies drained of blood, without signs of struggle. Those who glimpsed Whitlock children claimed their eyes glowed faintly, and their voices didn't come from mouths, but directly inside the mind. By then, it was clear. The family was no longer just cursed blood. They had become something else entirely. A secret experiment that had slipped its leash. By the late 20th century, the Whitlock name had vanished from official records, but their presence surfaced more and more. In strange incidents, local newspaper clippings, and whispered rumors. In 1987, a schoolteacher in West Virginia reported that one of her pupils, 8-year-old Daniel Whitlock, stood up during class, raised his hand toward the window, and the glass cracked in a spiderweb pattern. The children screamed, she wrote, but he only smiled, as if he had been waiting for it. In the early 90s, a Kentucky teenager from the Whitlock family was arrested after a brawl. The police report noted that 3 victims had identical rib fractures, as though struck by a single unseen force. The boy said only, "It was their fault. They thought bad things about me." Hospitals began seeing the inexplicable. In 1998, doctors in Louisville treated a Whitlock boy in a coma. After 3 days, he woke and recited, minute by minute, what had happened outside his room, which medicines were administered to other patients, what the nurses argued about, even the exact words one whispered to another. No explanation was ever found. By the early 2000s, it was clear Whitlock descendants had spread far beyond Appalachia. They appeared in Ohio, Indiana, even New Hampshire. They were reclusive, rarely in the public eye, but sometimes the line between their world and ours broke wide open. In 2011, at a high school dance in Madison, Indiana, the lights went out. The music stopped, but the students kept moving, dancing in perfect unison like puppets. Witnesses swore a Whitlock girl stood at the center of the gym, her eyes glowing gold as she whispered words no one could understand. When the lights returned, everyone collapsed, drained and gasping. The girl was gone. Journalists tried to chase the truth. In 2014, local reporter Thomas Banks traveled into the Appalachians to meet the family. All that was found was his recorder. On it, his trembling voice said, They don't hide. They're among us. God, there are too many," followed by a sharp metallic sound, then silence. By then, government reports again mentioned the Whitlock bloodline, but there was no hunting them anymore. This was no longer one cursed farm in the mountains. It was a network, hundreds, perhaps thousands, bound by blood, and by something far darker. And everything pointed to one truth. They were preparing for the next step. When Emily Harper tried to close the folder with the priest's note and forget about it, it was already too late. The story refused to end. In the archive's inbox, she saw repeated information requests about the Whitlock family from private law firms in Washington. A quick FOIA search returned heavily redacted files, all stamped with the same words: Whitlock line, phase transition. Emily drove into the Appalachians herself. At a dimly lit gas station off an old highway, a gray-haired postman in a crooked cap approached her. He didn't ask who she was. He simply said, "They've been among us for a long time. We thought there were few of them. We were wrong." He handed her a flash drive. On it was an audio file dated 2016. A child's voice, calm, clear, disturbingly alien. "Soon there will be many of us. So many. Mama is pregnant. An auntie. And the girl next door. We made an agreement." "What agreement?" The man's breath quickened. "Synchronization." That spring, the counties around the mountains experienced the impossible. Statistics showed a wave of pregnancies beginning within the same week. Women with no ties to one another. Ultrasounds revealed accelerated fetal growth, displaced organs, extra structures. Doctors closed the files. Newspapers called it a hoax. But infants vanished from hospitals, and security cameras all went blank at the same moments. The halls filled with a faint crackling, lights stuttering as if someone flipped a switch behind the walls. Meanwhile, new names surfaced. The Whitlock Foundation, a rising philanthropic trust funding education, climate initiatives, biomedical research. Its directors looked impeccable. Prep school graduates, hospital patrons, faces on campaign posters. Yet at closed gatherings, their rhetoric shifted. They spoke of a new ethic of species, of fear as a resource, of compassion as poison. Emily once slipped into the lobby of such an event under the guise of an archivist contractor. When the speaker uttered the word transition, every smartphone in the hall froze at once, indicators winking out like candles in a draft. Digging deeper, Emily uncovered letters 60 years old. The correspondence of Dr. Clark with an unknown addressee signed only a S. The experiment has accelerated. Third cycle confirmed. Group cohesion strengthens during collective vocalization. They merge when they sing. Next stage, integration into administrative clusters. Replacement must be seamless. Timeline, 1 to 2 generations. Day by day, Emily noticed the world bending around her. In a library, two teenagers sat at a table silent, yet turned the same pages in perfect unison, eyes lingering on the same word, as if commanded by an unseen conductor. At a parking lot, a woman looked up from her stroller, and Emily recoiled. For a split second, a golden film slid across the woman's iris, like sunlight trapped inside. That night, a forgotten landline rang in Emily's apartment. The voice was gentle, almost warm. "Emily, your work is remarkable, but the cycle is complete. We don't oppose your truth, it simply no longer matters. Think of your health." "Who are you?" "Neighbors." By morning, every lilac bush outside her building was gone. Not broken, uprooted clean, as if carved out by an invisible scalpel. Her last writings were not articles but prayers. She wrote that species is a contract, and the contract collapses when one side begins to speak differently, and to hear differently. She warned that the Whitlocks no longer hide. They sit on school boards, on corporate boards, on juries. They buy media outlets. They decide which words remain in textbooks and which vanish. And every time storefronts go dark for a heartbeat, every time neon lights crackle faintly, dozens of voices whisper the same word in unison, a word humans cannot pronounce. The flash drive contained a second file, a short video from a body camera, a hospital corridor, 20 doors, flickering light, wet footprints, small as a child's, trailed across the tiles. The lens turned toward a window, nothing outside, but in the glass reflection, the nursery was empty. Then, just above the camera, close enough to fog the lens, for golden pupils flared like ripples on water. Then silence. A sharp clap. The feed cut out. A week later, Emily resigned and disappeared without leaving an address. Her final letter read, "You ask if we have a choice. We do. But it isn't between knowing and not knowing. It's between being human and remaining so when humanity ceases to be the norm. If one day you hear your children singing soundlessly, don't try to join their melody. Remember, choirs don't accept solos. This is not a story of a cursed family. It is a protocol for changing the guard. And when you look tomorrow into the eyes of the boy on your block and realize he looked away not out of fear, but out of pity, you'll know the transition is already here, and we're only extras in it." By the early 2020s, the Whitlock bloodline was no longer confined to mountains and rumors. They were woven into the fabric of America, a thread no one could pull free. A congressman from Ohio, known for his uncanny composure, never blinking during televised debates. A Silicon Valley CEO whose company developed predictive interfaces years before the technology should have existed. A group of high school valedictorians across 3 states who all gave the same graduation speech word for word, without ever meeting each other. Individually, the stories seemed like coincidences. Together, they formed a pattern. Anonymous sources in federal agencies whispered of sleeper communities, entire neighborhoods that appeared normal, but whose residents all shared the same golden-tinged eyes. When an outsider moved in, their lights flickered at night, and within weeks the newcomer was gone. The official records always listed a transfer, a foreclosure, a medical emergency. But there were no goodbyes. A leaked memo from the Department of Defense carried a chilling conclusion. "We may already be outnumbered in key sectors. The transition is not pending, it is underway." Doctors, too, began to break their silence. One pediatrician from New Hampshire admitted, under condition of anonymity, "These children do not cry when they are born. They look at you and for a second you feel stripped bare. They do not learn language. They seem to remember it. Some refuse food for days but never weaken. They know things about their parents no one told them. They know things about me." And then there were the sounds. Reports came from Kentucky, Maine, Indiana. Late at night, people heard faint humming that wasn't carried by wind or machine. Entire neighborhoods seemed to vibrate with it. Those who listened too long described visions, memories that weren't their own, futures they weren't meant to see. Emily Harper's final warning circulated on underground forums before disappearing. "They don't need to fight us. They don't need to announce themselves. They will sing together, and when they do, we will join, not because we want to, but because our minds will have no choice. By the time her message vanished, sightings of Whitlock children were increasing. They no longer avoided playgrounds or malls. They walked among other kids, smiling politely, mimicking normalcy. Yet when the sunlight hit their eyes, even for an instant, the reflection wasn't of the sky. It was of something vast, ordered, and merciless. The Whitlocks were never an anomaly. They were never a curse. They were preparation. And the preparation was over. What would you do if the person sitting across from you should not exist? If their birth broke every law of biology, every rule of morality? That question began in an archive, a whisper from a forgotten priest's note. But now it belongs to all of us. The Whitlocks were once a secret buried in the mountains, hidden in dusty ledgers and censored reports. Today they are not hidden at all. They are neighbors, teachers, leaders, and children laughing on playgrounds. They walk among us, unremarkable until the light catches their eyes, and you see the flicker of something older, colder, and infinitely patient. For 2 centuries, their line defied extinction. Deformity became power, whispers became commands, accidents became design. What started as incestuous survival grew into an experiment. And what was once an experiment is now a strategy. Government files call it the transition. The Whitlocks call it nothing at all. They don't need a name. They don't need announcements or declarations. They simply live, multiply, and synchronize. Every generation brings more of them, fewer of us. Emily Harper's notes ended with a question, scrawled in the margin of her final page. What if we are the anomaly? What if they are what comes next? She disappeared soon after. No body, no record. Only her warning remains, copied and recopied across forums, screenshots shared in hushed tones, a ghost in the digital static. When the day comes that you hear no sound, yet your children begin to sing, understand this: you are no longer the audience of their song. You are the instrument. The Whitlocks are not a family. They are a blueprint. And blueprints are not meant to stay on paper. So the next time you walk into a crowded room and feel, for just a moment, that every conversation pauses at once, that every head tilts a fraction in the same direction, remember this story. Remember the cracked crucifix, the chained boy in the cellar, the girl in the gymnasium, the child's voice speaking of synchronization. And ask yourself, are you watching them? Or are they already watching you? The transition is not coming. It has already begun. Across America, the signs are everywhere if you know where to look. In courtrooms, juries return verdicts in eerie unison, not a single dissenting vote. In classrooms, children sometimes stop mid-sentence and glance at one another, as if listening to a command no one else can hear. In churches, congregations describe sudden silences, whole rooms forgetting the words to hymns they've sung their entire lives, replaced by a low, wordless humming. On the surface, life continues. Elections are held, businesses open, families celebrate birthdays. But beneath that fragile normalcy, something ancient is knitting itself together. The Whitlocks are not merely breeding within their own bloodline anymore. They are reaching outward, folding us into their design one mind at a time. Doctors whisper of mothers who gave birth to children that were not theirs, genetic codes rewritten during pregnancy. Teachers speak of students who solve problems before questions are asked. A paramedic swore he treated a car crash victim who healed so quickly that his bones realigned under the X-ray as he watched. The man left the hospital that same night, without discharge papers, without a trace in the system. The government knows. It has always known. From Oak Ridge to hidden basements in D.C., reports circulate with phrases like post-human adaptation and loss of species dominance. But there is no plan to stop it. How do you stop evolution when it moves faster than your bullets, your laws, your imagination? Some say the Whitlocks are not even the origin, that the incestuous beginnings were merely the door, and something else walked through it. Something that needed human vessels to enter this world. Perhaps they are not a family at all, but an infection wearing the mask of one. And yet, listen closely. There is no rage in their voices, no vengeance, only inevitability. The child's words echo like scripture. Soon there will be many. Synchronization. Emily Harper's notes end where our choices begin. She wrote, "The Whitlocks do not want to kill us. They want to transform us. They do not conquer with violence, they conquer with harmony." The choir grows, and when the song begins, you will either sing or vanish into silence. Already, in towns across Appalachia, people wake to find their clocks reset to the same time. Entire neighborhoods step outside at night, standing still under the stars, their faces blank, waiting. When questioned the next morning, none remember leaving their beds. Perhaps you've felt it too. That moment when your thoughts stop belonging entirely to you. When a word repeats in your mind, though no one spoke it aloud. When you walk into a room and everyone looks up at once, pupils catching the light with a faint golden glint. The Whitlocks are not the future. They are the present, disguised as patience. And patience is running out. By the mid-2020s, the Whitlock phenomenon was no longer an Appalachian secret. Reports began surfacing from places far beyond the American heartland. In Sao Paulo, Brazil, a maternity ward nurse described newborn twins with identical golden irises and synchronized breathing patterns. "They didn't cry," she wrote. "They hummed. And every instrument in the room began to vibrate." In rural France, an entire classroom of children stopped their lessons at the exact same minute and began reciting a passage from a book none of them had ever been assigned. The teacher fainted when she realized the words were from her own private diary. And in Tokyo, during rush hour, surveillance cameras recorded hundreds of commuters freezing in place on a subway platform. For 43 seconds, they stood motionless, eyes unfocused, before resuming their routines as though nothing had happened. Not a single participant recalled the event. The Whitlocks had crossed oceans, or perhaps they had never been confined to America at all. An internal UN memorandum, leaked to journalists in Geneva, carried the chilling subject line, "Anomalous demographic clusters, non-random distribution." The document suggested that synchronized births, accelerated pregnancies, and unexplained child anomalies were increasing across every continent. The report's final paragraph was stark. "This is not isolated mutation. It is coordinated emergence." Back in the United States, evidence mounted in cities as well as towns. In Chicago, an entire jury delivered a complex verdict in less than 3 minutes, unanimous without debate. The presiding judge, off record, admitted, "It was as if the decision had already been made before they entered the courtroom." In New York, a viral video briefly appeared online before being taken down. It showed commuters in a Brooklyn subway car falling silent at once. Their heads turned simultaneously toward the camera. Dozens of eyes gleamed faintly gold as a single child's voice whispered from nowhere. Synchronization achieved. The account that uploaded it was deleted within an hour, the original footage scrubbed from servers. Even the Vatican was not immune. A priest in Rome reported that during Mass, the congregation lost track of the Latin liturgy. Instead, they chanted a low, droning note in perfect harmony until every candle in the cathedral guttered out. For the first time in human history, governments faced an enemy they could not declare war on. The Whitlocks had no flag, no territory, no manifesto. They did not need to announce themselves. Their very existence spread like a pattern unfolding across the globe. Emily Harper's missing notes, recovered from a thumb drive mailed anonymously to a Boston newsroom, contained one last fragment of her handwriting. The Whitlocks are not multiplying. They are converging. Across borders, across bloodlines, across the definition of what it means to be human. They are not many. They are one. If that was true, then the question was no longer whether humanity could stop them. The question was whether humanity had ever been separate at all. The transition was never a prophecy. It was a schedule. And by the time the world began to notice, the calendar was already past its final page. In 2027, satellites recorded an unexplained blackout stretching across 3 states in the Midwest. Power grids failed without warning. For 21 minutes, entire cities sat in darkness. When the lights returned, nothing seemed changed. Yet eyewitnesses spoke of a sound that filled the night. A low, resonant chord, as if thousands of voices were singing beneath the earth. Dogs clawed at doors, infants laughed in their sleep, and those who listened too closely reported visions of skies filled with unfamiliar constellations. Governments scrambled to frame it as infrastructure failure, but leaked transcripts from emergency briefings painted a different picture. One line appeared again and again. The synchronization event has entered phase finalis. By now, the Whitlocks were no longer a hidden bloodline. They were senators, scientists, journalists, CEOs. They were the student who finished your sentence before you spoke, the doctor who stared a second too long into your eyes, the neighbor whose child never stumbled when learning to walk. The transition did not need armies. It did not need revolutions. It needed only patience and harmony. Emily Harper's name resurfaced once more. A video clip, grainy and half-corrupted, appeared briefly on encrypted forums. She sat in a dark room, a single candle illuminating her face. Her voice was steady, resigned. You believe you can resist, but resistance was never the point. We were not the first species to walk this earth, nor will we be the last. They are not destroying us. They are replacing us. And when you feel that strange silence in a crowded place, when dozens of people turn their heads in unison, understand that silence is the moment your song is rewritten. The clip cut to static, but one frame lingered. Her eyes, glinting faintly gold. Now the signs are everywhere. A crowd pausing mid-crosswalk in Los Angeles, staring upward at a sky with no anomaly. A courtroom in Berlin where 12 jurors smiled at once. A school choir in Toronto humming a note that cracked windows across the auditorium. The Whitlocks are no longer family. They are no longer a curse whispered in the mountains. They are the blueprint, fully built. And we, those who still call ourselves human, are living in the shadow of the completed design. So when the humming begins in your own neighborhood, when your child pauses at dinner and smiles with a knowledge too old for their age, remember this story. Remember that humanity did not lose a battle. Humanity was absorbed into a song too vast to silence. The transition is not coming. It is here. And maybe, without even knowing it, you are already singing along.